Tony was testing a new technology. He injected a micro-repulsor control device into his arm, allowing him to remotely summon and control his Mark 42 suit from anywhere. One by one, the suit's pieces flew toward him and locked onto his body, but the parts were moving so fast that every impact left him in pain. Finally, the faceplate rushed toward him, and in classic Tony Stark fashion, he jumped into it at the last second. For a moment, everything looked perfect until the final back piece slammed into the suit, causing the entire armor to fall apart and sending Tony crashing to the floor. Meanwhile, a new threat was terrifying America. A mysterious terrorist leader known as the Mandarin had been carrying out deadly attacks across the country. Every news channel was covering the story, and fear was spreading everywhere. During a press conference, President Ellis assured the public that Colonel James Rhodes, now operating as the Iron Patriot, was working to stop the terrorist before he could strike again. Later, Tony met Rhodey at a bar and demanded every piece of information available on the Mandarin. Rhodey explained that the terrorist had already been linked to 9 separate attacks. The strangest part was that none of their technology could detect the bombs before they exploded. Tony immediately offered his help. He told Rhodey that Stark Industries had developed countless new technologies that could help track the attacks. But Rhodey wasn't interested. He pointed out that Tony looked exhausted and hadn't slept properly in days. This wasn't a superhero problem anymore. It was becoming a personal one. Just then, a young boy approached Tony for an autograph. But instead of asking about Iron Man, the kid asked a simple question. How did you survive going through that wormhole during the Chitauri invasion? The question instantly triggered Tony's trauma. His breathing became heavy. Panic took over. Jarvis quickly scanned him and confirmed that there was nothing physically wrong with his heart or brain. What Tony had experienced was a severe anxiety attack. The diagnosis shocked him. Not knowing how to deal with it, Tony quietly left. Meanwhile, at Stark Industries, Pepper Potts was meeting an unexpected visitor. The man was Aldrich Killian, founder and CEO of AIM, Advanced Idea Mechanics. Pepper had worked with him years ago, and seeing him again felt strange. Back then, Killian had been awkward and physically disabled. Now, he was confident, charismatic, and completely transformed. Killian revealed that his team had developed a revolutionary project called Extremis. Using advanced genetic engineering and nanotechnology, Extremis could regenerate damaged tissue, heal severe injuries, and even regrow missing limbs in a matter of moments. Pepper was impressed, but also concerned. She immediately realized that technology this powerful could easily be used to create super soldiers. And if that happened, Tony would never support it. Because of that, Pepper refused to join Killian's project. Outside the building, Happy Hogan, now the head of Stark Industries security, had been keeping an eye on the meeting. He called Tony and jokingly mentioned that Killian had become surprisingly handsome since the last time they met. Tony had no idea what he was talking about, so Happy reminded him of a night back in 1999. The story flashed back to a New Year's Eve science conference. There, Tony met Maya Hansen, a brilliant genetic biologist. As he headed toward her hotel room to see her research, he was stopped by a strange and socially awkward scientist named Aldrich Killian. Killian excitedly introduced Tony to AIM and explained that he had been following Maya's research for years. He claimed they had a huge project that could change the future and desperately wanted Tony's help. Tony casually promised to meet him on the rooftop later. Then he walked away. Inside the room, Maya showed Tony her groundbreaking Extremis research. She demonstrated how it could regenerate living tissue by using a plant as an example. After a leaf was torn off, it slowly grew back. But moments later, the unstable experiment triggered a small explosion. Neither Tony nor Maya paid much attention to it. As midnight arrived and New Year's celebrations began, Killian stood alone on the rooftop waiting for Tony. He believed Tony would keep his promise, but Tony never showed up. The memory ended, and Happy urged Tony to come to Stark Industries immediately. Tony ignored the warning and shoved his phone aside. Meanwhile, Happy remained suspicious of Killian's bodyguard, Eric Savin. As Eric left with Killian, Happy secretly photographed his license plate, convinced something wasn't right. Later that night, Pepper returned home. She discovered that Tony wasn't waiting for her at all. Instead, he was busy testing another one of his remote-controlled Iron Man drones. Pepper came downstairs and noticed that he had already eaten dinner. Annoyed, she reminded him that they were supposed to have dinner together. Tony awkwardly replied that since she had spent the day with Killian, he assumed the two of them had already gone out to eat. Pepper immediately realized what he was implying. "Are you seriously jealous?" Tony quickly apologized. Then, for the first time, he admitted what had really been happening to him. Ever since New York, he hadn't been sleeping. Every night he thought about the wormhole, the aliens, and the endless dangers waiting beyond Earth. He wasn't building new suits because he loved technology. He was building them because he was afraid. Afraid that another attack would come. Afraid that he wouldn't be ready. And most of all, afraid that one day he might lose Pepper. Hearing the truth, Pepper's anger faded. The two finally put everything aside and went to sleep together. That night, Tony's mind drifted back to the Battle of New York. As Tony panicked in his sleep, one of his Iron Man suits automatically activated in defense mode. Mistaking Pepper for a threat, the armor suddenly attacked her. Tony woke up just in time and managed to shut the suit down before it could seriously hurt her. Even so, Pepper was terrified. She realized Tony's condition was getting worse and told him she couldn't keep sleeping like this. Upset and shaken, she walked away. The next day, events took a darker turn. At a Chinese theater in Tennessee, Eric Savan, Killian's bodyguard, met with a former soldier named Jack Taggart. Eric handed him a mysterious briefcase. Unknown to the public, Jack had been subjected to Extremis experiments. The treatment had made him dependent on the formula, and his body was becoming increasingly unstable. Meanwhile, Happy Hogan had secretly followed Eric and witnessed the exchange. Growing suspicious, Happy deliberately bumped into Eric and managed to steal one of the capsules from the briefcase. When he held it up, Eric immediately demanded it back. Happy refused. Instead, he accused Eric of hiding something and threw the first punch. But Eric wasn't an ordinary man. Like many of Killian's test subjects, he had been enhanced with Extremis. Any injury he suffered healed almost instantly. Within seconds, Eric overpowered Happy. At the same time, Jack's condition spiraled out of control. His body couldn't handle the Extremis overload any longer. The pain became unbearable. Then suddenly, he exploded. A massive blast ripped through the entire building. Happy was caught in the explosion and badly injured. As he struggled to stay conscious, he witnessed something impossible. Eric's body had also been severely damaged by the blast, but within moments, the wounds began healing themselves. The flesh regenerated right before Happy's eyes. Then Eric calmly walked away. Soon after, the Mandarin appeared on television once again. He claimed responsibility for the explosion and declared it a warning to President Ellis. When Tony learned that Happy had been hospitalized, he immediately rushed to see him. The sight of his friend lying unconscious filled him with rage. As Tony left the hospital, reporters surrounded him with questions about the Mandarin. For once, Tony didn't hold back. Looking directly into the cameras, he publicly challenged the terrorist. He boldly gave out his home address and told the Mandarin exactly where to find him. Then he delivered a warning. "I'm not afraid of you. If you've got the guts, come and get me." The challenge instantly became national news. Back at home, Tony started investigating the explosion himself. Using Jarvis, he reconstructed the entire crime scene as a virtual simulation. The analysis revealed something unusual. The blast had generated temperatures of nearly 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That wasn't normal bomb damage. Jarvis searched for similar incidents across the country and found several matching cases. One of them had occurred in Tennessee. The strange thing was that the Mandarin had never claimed responsibility for that explosion. And every victim in these cases had one thing in common. They were all military personnel. At that moment, Tony realized something wasn't adding up. These weren't random terrorist attacks. Someone was covering up a much bigger secret. Determined to uncover the truth, he decided to travel to Tennessee himself. Just then, Maya Hansen unexpectedly arrived at his house. She told Tony that she needed to discuss something extremely important. Before she could explain, Pepper walked in. The situation became instantly awkward. Pepper quickly recognized Maya as one of Tony's former girlfriends and wasn't exactly thrilled to see her. More importantly, Pepper warned Tony that staying at the house was dangerous. After publicly challenging the Mandarin, they had become targets. Tony refused to leave, and seconds later, his worst mistake came back to haunt him. Missiles suddenly streaked toward the mansion. The entire house exploded. Eric Savan had arrived to eliminate Tony before he could uncover the truth behind Extremis and the Mandarin. As the attack began, Tony immediately summoned his armor. Instead of putting it on himself, he used it to protect Pepper. He sent the suit onto her and ordered her to get Maya to safety. Pepper escaped just in time. The moment she was clear, Tony recalled the armor back to himself and entered the fight. Eric's forces launched wave after wave of attacks. Tony tried taking flight, but the Mark 42 armor was still unfinished. The suit wasn't fully combat ready, making every move unreliable. Even so, Tony used his creativity to fight back. destroying enemy helicopters one by one. But the battle quickly got worse. One of the helicopters crashed directly into the mansion. The impact destroyed huge sections of the structure. Tony watched helplessly as his collection of Iron Man suits was destroyed. His luxury cars tumbled into the ocean below. Everything he had built was collapsing around him. Trying to escape the wreckage, Tony became trapped in cables and was dragged underwater. The damaged structure continued sinking. Unable to free himself, he was crushed beneath the debris and lost consciousness. Fortunately, Jarvis took control. The AI rebooted the suit's flight systems and carried Tony away from the collapsing mansion. Meanwhile, Pepper stood helplessly above the destruction. From her perspective, Tony had died in the explosion. Heartbroken, she watched everything disappear beneath the waves. Hours later, Tony finally regained consciousness. Jarvis informed him that they were approaching Tennessee, the location connected to the mysterious explosions. There was just one problem. The suit only had 5% power remaining. Moments later, it crash-landed. With no energy left, the Mark 42 armor completely shut down. Tony climbed out and began dragging the heavy suit through the snow. He found an abandoned garage to use as a temporary shelter. For the first time in years, Iron Man was stranded without his technology. Using a public phone, Tony left Pepper a voice message. He apologized for all the mistakes he had made. Then he explained that he wouldn't be coming home anytime soon, because before he could return, he was going to find the Mandarin, and he was going to end this once and for all. Back at the abandoned garage, Tony got to work repairing the damaged Mark 42 armor. But before he could make much progress, a young boy suddenly appeared and pointed a toy gun at him. The kid's name was Harley Keener. Tony quickly introduced himself as Iron Man, and Harley instantly recognized him. He even showed Tony a newspaper headline, claiming that Tony Stark had died in the Malibu mansion attack. Meanwhile, back in California, rescue crews were still clearing the wreckage of Tony's destroyed home. As Pepper searched through the debris, she found one of Tony's damaged Iron Man helmets. When she activated it, a recorded message from Tony played. The moment she heard his voice, she finally realized he was still alive. Relieved, Pepper finally had a reason to hope. Meanwhile, Tony and Harley traveled to the site of the mysterious Tennessee explosion. Several people had died there, including a former soldier. Determined to uncover the truth, Tony tracked down the soldier's mother. She was drowning her grief in alcohol and struggling to cope with the loss of her son. As Tony questioned her about the incident, she handed him a file connected to AIM. The moment Tony looked through it, everything started making sense. The file contained records related to multiple injured soldiers, including Jack Taggart, the man who had exploded at the theater. Tony immediately realized that Killian had been secretly experimenting on wounded military veterans. Before he could investigate further, two Extremis operatives, Ellen Brandt and Eric Savan, arrived to recover the file. Fortunately, Tony hid the evidence before they found it. Ellen attacked. A local sheriff tried to intervene, but she killed him without hesitation. That gave Tony the chance to escape. As the fight continued, Tony finally witnessed the true power of Extremis. Even after suffering severe burns, Ellen's body regenerated almost instantly. Every injury healed within seconds. She seemed nearly impossible to kill, but Tony Stark had never relied on strength alone. He relied on intelligence. Using the environment around him, Tony ignited a massive fire and trapped Ellen inside. Her unstable Extremis condition overloaded, and she was finally killed. But the fight wasn't over. Eric Savan attacked next, dropping a water tower onto Tony. Tony barely escaped and used improvised weapons to strike back. With the enemies defeated, Tony grabbed the AIM file and stole Eric's SUV. Harley immediately volunteered to come along. Tony refused. Instead, he gave the boy an important mission. Harley would stay behind, monitor the armor, and make sure it continued charging. For the first time, Tony was trusting someone else to help him. As he drove away, Tony contacted Rhodey. Rhodey was still hunting for the Mandarin's location and had access to information that Tony needed. Since AIM had upgraded the Iron Patriot armor, Rhodey was able to provide credentials that helped Tony gain access to AIM's highly secured systems. Using a mobile news van and a satellite connection, Tony began hacking into the company's database. The van belonged to a man named Gary, who turned out to be one of Tony's biggest fans. After meeting his hero, Gary eagerly agreed to help. Tony explained that he was chasing dangerous people and needed a stronger signal to access the servers. Gary immediately climbed onto the roof and boosted the connection. Within minutes, Tony broke into AIM's files, and what he discovered was horrifying. Killian had been recruiting wounded soldiers and injecting them with Extremis. The treatment could regenerate missing limbs and heal devastating injuries. To many veterans, it looked like a miracle, but there was a deadly flaw. Extremis dramatically increased body temperature and cellular activity. If a subject couldn't stabilize the reaction, their body became a living bomb, and eventually, they exploded. Suddenly, all the so-called terrorist attacks made sense. These weren't bombings, they were failed Extremis experiments. At the same time, Pepper confronted Maya Hansen and demanded answers. She wanted to know why Maya had visited Tony right before the mansion attack. Maya finally revealed the truth. She admitted that she worked for Killian and that Killian was connected to the Mandarin. Before Pepper could react, Killian himself arrived. Furious, he accused Maya of betraying him by contacting Tony. Maya quickly defended herself. She explained that Extremis was still flawed and that Tony Stark might be the only person capable of fixing it. And now that they had Pepper, they could force Tony to cooperate. Killian liked the idea. For the moment, he allowed Maya to live. Elsewhere, Rhodey continued searching for the Mandarin. His investigation led him to an abandoned compound that looked like a terrorist hideout. But when he arrived, something felt wrong. Instead of terrorists, he found several frightened women being held there against their will. Rhodey immediately freed them. Unfortunately, it was all a trap. One of the women was secretly working for Killian. Enhanced with Extremis powers, she suddenly attacked Rhodey. The goal had never been to kill him. They wanted the Iron Patriot armor. Meanwhile, Tony contacted Harley and Jarvis for an update. Using satellite data, Jarvis finally traced the source of the Mandarin's broadcasts. The signal was coming from Miami, Florida. At last, Tony had a location, but there was one major problem. To attack the Mandarin, he needed his armor, and the Mark 42 was barely charged. Jarvis informed him that the suit had gained only a small amount of power and was nowhere near ready for combat. Hearing that, Tony's confidence immediately started slipping. Without his armor, without his technology, he felt vulnerable. The memories of New York came rushing back once again, and another panic attack began to take hold. Just as Tony was starting to panic again, Harley reminded him of something important. "You're a mechanic. You build things. That's what you do." The words hit harder than Harley probably realized. For the first time in days, Tony stopped thinking like Iron Man and started thinking like Tony Stark. Using supplies from a local hardware store, he built a collection of homemade weapons, gadgets, and traps. Then he headed straight for Miami, Florida, the source of the Mandarin's broadcasts. Once there, Tony infiltrated the heavily guarded compound. Without a fully functioning suit, he relied entirely on his intelligence and improvised weapons. One by one, the guards fell as Tony fought his way inside. Finally, he came face to face with the infamous Mandarin, but something immediately felt wrong. Instead of acting like a ruthless terrorist mastermind, the man was behaving like a confused drunk. To get answers, Tony fired a gun near him, startling him into telling the truth. The man nervously revealed his real name, Trevor Slattery, and he wasn't a terrorist at all. He was an actor. According to Trevor, the Mandarin was never a real person. It was simply a character created for television. Killian had found Trevor years earlier, while he was struggling with drug addiction. In exchange for drugs, money, and a new life, Trevor agreed to play the role of the world's most feared terrorist. His appearance had even been altered through cosmetic procedures, so nobody would recognize him. The fake Mandarin served one purpose: to take the blame whenever Killian's failed Extremis experiments exploded and killed innocent people. Suddenly, everything made sense. The terrorist attacks, the threats, the videos, the fear, it had all been one giant illusion. Tony was furious. Because of this lie, countless people had died, and Happy was still lying in a hospital bed. Before Tony could do anything else, Eric Savin suddenly appeared. Despite their previous fight, Eric had survived. He attacked Tony without warning and knocked him unconscious. When Tony finally woke up, he found himself tied up inside Killian's facility. Maya Hansen was there. She explained that Extremis was close to perfection, but still had flaws. Killian believed Tony was the only person smart enough to solve the remaining problems. Tony refused immediately. He reminded Maya that Extremis had already killed countless people. She had once wanted to help humanity, but now she was helping create monsters. At that moment, Killian entered the room. For years, he had blamed Tony for what happened on New Year's Eve back in 1999. Killian reminded Tony how he had promised to meet him on the rooftop in Switzerland and never showed up. While Tony had forgotten about it completely, Killian never had. Standing alone on that rooftop made him realize something. Nobody noticed him. Nobody cared about him. So he disappeared into the shadows. He built AIM, he created Extremis, and he invented the Mandarin as the face of fear. Now, according to Killian, Tony was finally going to help complete his life's work. To force his cooperation, Killian showed Tony a live holographic image of Pepper. She was in terrible condition. Killian had injected her with Extremis. Her life was hanging by a thread. Watching Pepper suffer left Tony helpless. Killian grabbed Tony and made his intentions clear. Either Tony helped him or Pepper died. Seeing this, Maya finally realized how far things had gone. She threatened Killian, saying that if he didn't release Tony, she would expose everything. Killian didn't hesitate. He killed Maya on the spot. Then he calmly informed Tony that Maya was no longer necessary. From now on, Tony would finish the project instead. Elsewhere, Eric informed Killian that Rhodey had been captured. There was only one problem. Rhodey refused to leave the Iron Patriot armor, so Killian heated the suit until Rhodey was forced to eject. Once Rhodey was removed, Eric stole the armor because the next stage of Killian's plan was already underway. They were going after the president. Meanwhile, Rhodey managed to escape captivity. At the same time, Tony secretly activated the micro-repulsor implant in his arm. The Mark 42 armor responded to the signal and began flying toward him piece by piece. As the suit arrived, Tony fought his way through dozens of guards. One after another, the armor sections attached themselves to his body until he was back in action. Soon, Tony and Rhodey reunited. The first thing Rhodey asked about was Pepper. Unfortunately, Trevor knew very little. However, he did reveal one important detail. Killian was preparing something massive at sea, and whatever it was, the president was the target. Tony and Rhodey immediately left. They contacted Vice President Rodriguez and warned him that someone wearing the Iron Patriot armor would attempt to kidnap the president. But the Vice President never passed along the warning because he was secretly working with Killian. His disabled daughter needed Extremis treatment, and Killian had promised to help her. In exchange, the Vice President became part of the conspiracy. Soon after, Eric, wearing the Iron Patriot armor, attacked Air Force One. The assault was devastating. Security personnel were eliminated, and the president was captured. Using the armor, Eric transported him directly to Killian. Killian was waiting at the Roxxon Norco oil terminal. There, Pepper was already being held prisoner. Killian revealed his final plan to the president. He intended to execute him publicly. Then the vice president would take office and become the new commander-in-chief. With a puppet president under his control, Killian would gain influence over the entire country. Meanwhile, Tony learned that Air Force One had been attacked. By now, the Mark 42 suit was finally fully charged. He immediately launched toward the aircraft. Tony intercepted Eric before he could escape and demanded to know where the president had been taken. Eric refused to answer. Instead, he triggered an explosion aboard the plane. The blast tore open the side of the aircraft. Dozens of passengers and security agents were instantly sucked into the sky. With only seconds to act, Tony made a desperate plan. He instructed everyone to grab each other's hands. The falling passengers formed a human chain. Using every ounce of power the suit had, Tony managed to catch them and guide them safely into the ocean below. Against all odds, every single person survived. Afterward, Tony finally destroyed Eric, using a powerful unibeam blast from the arc reactor. As he prepared to continue the mission, the damaged armor slammed into a truck and was destroyed. But then the movie revealed something surprising. Tony had never been inside that armor. He had been remotely controlling it the entire time. The real Tony was already with Rhodey, and now they were heading toward the final battle. Jarvis informed Tony that the wreckage had finally been cleared from his mansion. That meant the Iron Legion was available again. Tony immediately ordered every remaining suit to deploy. Soon, he and Rhodey arrived at the Roxxon Norco oil terminal. From a distance, they spotted the president hanging above massive oil tanks. As they moved in to rescue him, dozens of Extremis soldiers surrounded them. The odds looked impossible, but then the sky lit up. One by one, Tony's Iron Legion suits arrived on the battlefield, and the final showdown was about to begin. With the final battle underway, Tony gave Jarvis a simple command: House Party Protocol. Seconds later, the entire Iron Legion joined the fight. Dozens of Iron Man suits flooded the oil terminal, attacking Extremis soldiers from every direction. Explosions erupted across the platform as Tony's drones pushed Killian's forces back. But the destruction created a new problem. The cell where Pepper was being held was caught in the chaos. Realizing she was in danger, Tony rushed to save her. Wearing one of the Iron Man suits, he blasted his way into the damaged structure and found Pepper trapped beneath the rubble. Just as he started pulling her free, Killian attacked. Tony managed to sever Killian's arm, but the victory lasted only seconds. Thanks to Extremis, the limb immediately began regenerating. The process was painful, but it proved that Killian was more dangerous than ever. At the same time, the damaged platform started collapsing. Pepper lost her footing and fell. Tony desperately tried to reach her, but she kept sliding closer and closer to the fiery depths below. Meanwhile, Rhodey successfully rescued President Ellis. Now back inside the Iron Patriot armor, he escorted the president to safety, while Tony stayed behind to finish the fight. Tony finally reached Pepper and told her to jump toward him. She trusted him, but despite his best effort, Tony couldn't grab her hand, and before his eyes, Pepper plunged nearly 200 feet into the flames below. For a moment, Tony froze. He believed she was dead. Fueled by grief and rage, he turned his full attention toward Killian. The two launched into an intense final battle across the collapsing oil platform. Tony hit Killian with everything he had, but nothing seemed to work. Every injury regenerated, every attack healed. Killian's Extremis powers made him nearly unstoppable. Soon, Killian began tearing apart Tony's armor piece by piece. Running out of options, Tony came up with one final plan. He summoned the Mark 42 suit and remotely locked Killian inside it. Then he activated the self-destruct sequence. A massive explosion engulfed the platform. For a moment, it looked like the battle was over. Tony barely managed to save himself by jumping into another suit before falling to his death. But then, Killian emerged from the fire, burned, damaged, but still alive. His body continued regenerating. Smiling, he declared that he was the true Mandarin, the real mastermind behind everything. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, someone unexpected returned. Pepper. The Extremis treatment had actually kept her alive after the fall. Now enhanced with the same powers as Killian, she fought back. For the first time, Killian found himself facing someone just as powerful as he was. The battle quickly turned in Pepper's favor. Meanwhile, Jarvis continued executing Tony's previous order to eliminate every Extremis-enhanced target. One of the Iron Legion suits mistakenly identified Pepper as a threat and moved in to attack her. Tony tried to stop it, but communication problems prevented him from reaching Jarvis in time. Fortunately, Pepper handled the situation herself. She destroyed the attacking armor, grabbed one of its missiles, and used it against Killian. The explosion completely consumed him. This time, there was no regeneration, no recovery, no escape. Aldrich Killian was finally dead. With the battle over, Pepper began worrying about the Extremis inside her body. But Tony reassured her. Fixing impossible problems was what he did best, and he promised to find a cure. After everything that had happened, Tony made an important decision. To prove that Pepper mattered more than the armor, he ordered every remaining Iron Legion suit to self-destruct. One by one, the suits exploded across the night sky like fireworks. The war was finally over. In the aftermath, Trevor Slattery and the vice president were arrested for their roles in Killian's conspiracy. Pepper was successfully cured of Extremis. Tony also underwent surgery to remove the shrapnel lodged near his heart, a problem that had haunted him since the very beginning of his journey as Iron Man. For the first time in years, he no longer needed the arc reactor in his chest to stay alive. Happy Hogan eventually woke up from his coma and made a full recovery. And back in Tennessee, Harley discovered one final surprise. When he entered his garage, he found that Tony had secretly transformed it into a fully equipped high-tech workshop. It contained tools, computers, and everything Harley could ever need to pursue his own inventions. It was Tony's way of saying thank you. As for Tony and Pepper, they finally found some peace after everything they had endured together. And that's where the story came to an end. But the movie had one last joke left. In the post-credit scene, it was revealed that Tony had been telling this entire story to Bruce Banner. The only problem? Bruce had fallen asleep long before Tony finished. Tony looked annoyed and asked if he had heard any of it. Bruce woke up and admitted that he hadn't. And with that hilarious moment, Iron Man 3 came to an end.